Hey, what's going on, everyone? I know it's been a while for those of y'all who've been around with me for a while or over the last few years, but there's a lot's happened over the last year and a half since I posted a video, and I'll share that. We'll talk about that down the road, not today. Today, I want to get into the meat and potatoes of why I'm here with y'all today. I want to jump right in and get to what's the get to the meat of the topic. I'm a little rusty, y'all. Bear with me, please. But today's video, as you've already seen, is why I support Trump. It's really funny. I want to get it I'm just going to flow with a couple of things on the top of my head. It's really funny what I've seen over the last 8 years or so, even in my own life and in my own opinion when it comes to Donald Trump. When he first ran for office, I was not a fan whatsoever. Now, I've been conservative for quite a few years now, but early on, when he originally ran, I couldn't stand the guy, to be honest with you. When it came down to him and Ted Cruz, I was a huge Ted Cruz supporter. I already knew there was no way I was going to support Hillary. That was a given. But I did not want, if you can go back in my timeline and see me having a conversation, see my Facebook timeline and see me talking about Trump in 2015, 2016, there's typically nothing good. But throughout the course of so my perspective was this guy is a lifelong New York liberal who decided to run as a Democrat, and he's a Republican in name only. These were my legitimate thoughts. And he shouldn't be trusted. And then you had all the other controversy going on with him, some of the silly things that he said early on, and I was not a fan. But over the course of his first administration, especially if you subtract COVID, the impact of COVID, dude was wildly successful. And I thought he did an amazing job as president. And I was kind of hush-hush. Believe it or not, most of y'all see me as being pretty outspoken. But back then, I was pretty hush-hush on my opinion of him as a president, of my support for him. But as time went on, I thought he did a great job. Many of the things that he was vilified for back in 2016 and throughout the course of his administration, now people are looking at those things and saying, hey, the dude wasn't crazy. So let me proceed into the initial context of this video. I have 6 topics. I don't expect to get into all these different areas because I want to try to keep it at around, I'm trying to keep it to an hour. I really hope so. But I also know it's been a while since I've been live with y'all. So I'm probably going to end up being a bit more long-winded. But I'm going to do my best to be a little more disciplined today. But why I support Trump, my top 6. I didn't even put the economy down, but I would say that that's one of the top reasons as to why I support him tremendously. The way our economy was, the way gas prices went down once we were, and the fact that we had become energy independent was massive. And I remember gas prices going down to, here in Vegas, I think it was under $2. I hadn't seen those things. I hadn't seen that price since like the early 2000s, maybe even late 90s. Seeing gas $2 a gallon or less than, it was insane. But under our current administration, there are times where it more than doubled because these people are so nuts and wacko about the environment that they don't even care. And then we're beholden to other nations for so many of our resources, but economically, and if you don't agree with that, all you have to do is look at what you paid for groceries 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, to what you're paying now. Look at what you're paying for when it comes to gas prices. Look at what you paid back in when Trump was president, as opposed to look at what we're paying now. As much as people are out there trying to tell us that the economy is good, it's almost like they're telling us, the leftist media primarily, it's almost like they're telling us, don't believe your lies. Like we're supposed to be idiots, even though I know for a fact, like I'm the prime primary breadwinner of my family. I know for a fact when I go to the grocery store that I'm forking out more money for groceries. I know for a fact when we're trying to fill up the gas tank to put gas in our car and our power bill, electric and gas, that things have shot up astronomically. There's no getting around that. People can try to spin it and say the economy's good under Joe Biden. BS. I call straight up BS on that. I think the vast majority of us would agree with that. Regardless of what side you're on, I think if we're being completely honest, the day-to-day impact that our current economy has us dealing with compared to under Trump, radically different. But I'm going to share it. I'm not just going to sit up here and talk to y'all the whole time. I want to share a few videos as we move on to, and that's all I'm going to touch on when it comes to the economy today. I may make some additional content where I'm sharing some resources specifically dealing with the economy, but I want to get to my first initial topic that I had written down was the border. That's big for me, definitely big for me. So I want to share a video with y'all. Let me know if you have any issue hearing this video as it proceeds.
I started my career in immigration enforcement in 1984 as a Border Patrol agent. I've worked for 6 presidents up to Donald Trump. Every president I've ever worked for took some steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have strong national security if you don't have border security. But President Biden is the first president in the history of this nation that I know of who came in office and unsecured the border on purpose. And even.
And I don't care what they try to say about what they did in June. These people went 3 years basically. First of all, Joe Biden undid all of Trump's border security bills, all his executive orders. They basically went back and undid all of that. So then they were telling people, they campaigned on the fact that we don't build walls, we build bridges, and that walls and border security is racist and all this garbage. They undid everything that Trump did, and then they systematically allowed tens of millions of people to come into our nation from God knows where, with God knows what kind of background that they have. I mean, and as the video progresses, my video talking to y'all progresses, we're going to talk about the repercussions, some of the repercussions, because again, this isn't an exhaustive video. I wish it could be, but then again, I'd be here for hours with y'all. But the repercussions of this open border, from these open borders, has been devastating to our country in multiple ways. So let's let the video proceed.
President Obama gave me the Presidential Rank Award, highest award available. Because what was I doing at the time? I was locating and deporting people in the country illegally. So we went for the most secure border of my lifetime. And it's not just my opinion. I've done this for 34 years. Anybody can go to cbp.gov, look at the data. We handed this administration the most secure border in my lifetime. And within months, we went from the most secure border to historic illegal immigration, numbers you've never seen before.
Absolutely.
It's not because it's seasonal. It's not because of climate change. It's not because of Trump. This is by design. We already heard about some of these.
He says it's by design. Just think about it for a second. Just think about it for a moment. When you hear Kamala Harris and you hear Joe Biden, and don't be fooled for a minute. Anybody who was around, who was paying attention, knows that Kamala Harris was given the position of border czar. That was her position. And if I don't share it today, and if you don't believe me, hit me up on Facebook, hit me up in the comments on YouTube, and I will share with you some information written before she ran. Because now that she's running for office, everybody's trying to backtrack and try to say, oh, she was never the border czar. She absolutely was the border czar. But now everybody's trying to play cleanup, the mainstream media, the liberal news outlets. I'm talking about the Alphabet TV networks to some of these more progressive, left-leaning websites They're all trying to play cleanup for this woman because they know that the border crisis, the problems we're facing in our country due to the wide open borders are her fault. They fall on her and Biden's head, bottom line, because he delegated that authority to her. And she did exactly what he wanted her to do. They were both in cahoots.
Some of these people are coming because economic reason or natural disasters. The bottom line is when you claim asylum, you must be escaping fear and persecution from your home government because your race, religion, political affiliation, or membership in a particular social group. That is not the fact. If you look at immigration court data over the last 10 years, you'll see that nearly 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at the border never get relief from U.S. courts that simply don't qualify. But they're coming and staying because of Biden's promises. I wrote an op-ed 6 months before the election. I said, President Biden becomes president, we'll lose the border. Based on the promises he made during the campaign. And he's kept those promises. Right now, we have record numbers of illegal aliens coming across the border. Catch and release is rampant. Right now, Secretary Mayorkas already said 85% of everybody coming to the border is being released in the country. They're not being detained. And why are they being detained? Because of 2 reasons. Number one, because he knows, like I do, that vast majority of these people will be ordered removed 5, 6, 7 years down the road, maybe 10. He also knows the Homeland Security Life Cycle Report says if you get an order removal and you're in an ice bed, you get removed 99% of the time. But if you're not in detention, your chances of being removed are slim. If you're a family unit, it's about 6%. That's why they're releasing them. Thousands of empty ice beds sitting there right now, already paid for by the taxpayer. They'd rather release them because they know the vast majority will lose their case and it'll be ordered removed. But if they're not in detention, they won't be removed. So this administration comes up with what they call lawful pathways, which I think are illegal, and I think they'll lose when the decision of the courts come out. The CBP-1 Act, 95.8% are approved. Where's the case-by-case analysis that is supposed to be done for people for parole? It's not being done. It's a shell game. They move people, they move thousands to the port of entry so they can claim less illegal entries between the port of entries, but it's failed. Because November, December, we saw record amounts of crossings on the border. Over 300,000. When they finally get order removal 7 years down the road, they'll have a USC child. They'll have 2 USC children. They'll get phone calls from, the director of ICE will get phone calls from the Hill saying, why'd you remove that person with 2 USC kids? Well, he didn't have 2 USC kids when he entered the country legally. So now that he has 2 USC kids.
I'm gonna move it up a little bit.
So it takes 5 or 6 years, they still must be removed. Or the system means nothing. I've been attacked numerous times because I worked with President Trump. They said our policy is inhumane. I've been called a racist and a bigot by members of Congress. But let's get one thing straight. Under President Trump, illegal immigration went to a 40, 45-year low, 83% decline in illegal immigration. There's been several studies saying 31% of women that make that journey through cartels get sexually assaulted. So let me ask you a question. I'll make a point.
Pay attention to this, y'all. I'm gonna back up just a few seconds. I want y'all to hear that again.
Illegal immigration. There's been several studies saying 31% of women that make that journey through cartels get sexually assaulted. So let me ask you a question. I'll make a point.
31%, he said. So that's almost 1 out of every 3 women that comes across the border end up getting sexually assaulted. 1 out of every 3. But they were calling him and Trump racist and, hating on families and whatnot. Tell me how that makes any sense whatsoever. And I haven't even touched on the impact that it has on our own society, the impact that it has on us as a country. I haven't even touched on that yet, but I will.
When 83% less people are coming, how many migrants didn't die crossing the border when 83% less were coming? How many people didn't die? How many people off the terror screening database didn't try to come into the country because Border Patrol's 100% vigilant on the line and now overwhelmed? How many women and children didn't get sex trafficking to the United States, forced into sex slavery, forced labor, debt bondage? How many billions did the criminal cartels not make? Under President Biden, where they call this humane, over 1,700 migrants have died on U.S. soil. Historic record, not counting the Darien Gap in Mexico and Central America. 112,000 Americans dying from fentanyl. Historical increase in sex trafficking, forced labor, and debt bondage. Almost 100,000 missing kids that were released by ORR. 440,000 unaccompanied children entered the country through the service of the cartels. Someone needs to explain to me how that's humane, any of this stuff. And a record number of people off the terrorist watch list being arrested. 1.9 million gotaways. That statement alone should convince anybody on either side. 1.9 million gotaways, the border is not secure. It's ridiculous.
Now, what do you say? What can you say? If you are here and you are a Biden supporter and you think open borders was a good thing and you actually paid attention to what this man just said, how can you think this wide open borders is a good idea? It's a good thing. How can you think that? Excuse me. Like, somebody just explain that to me. How he just broke down I think the number is over 100,000. Somewhere that it's been said that the number is close to 300,000 when it comes to children that are missing, that are possibly involved in some type of slavery or trafficking. And we haven't even touched on the high level of drugs that have entered into our country. How can we claim that this current administration, what they did when it came down to the border, is a good thing? I just want somebody to help me with that. If you have any idea, please put it in the comments. And I'm being straight up. I'm not trying to mock, or I'm not trying to make fun. But if you have any idea, I'm about to open up another video. So if you hear something pop off in the background, you know what's going on. So I'm going to pause it here because I'm going to show another video it's a little bit shorter in relation to the border. But I'm going to show another video so we can get into some more details, because this border issue, I'm telling y'all, is massive, and it's truly terrifying what this administration has unleashed potentially onto our nation. And again, I'm laying out the reasons why I support Donald Trump. That's what this is all about. I'm laying out the foundations, the reasons why I'm not a Democrat. I left the Democratic Party, probably back in 2010 when I saw them becoming more and more godless. And let me say this too. Let me lay down the foundations of who I am for those of y'all who don't know me. I'm a born-again follower of Jesus Christ. So I view the world, and I've heard this said recently, through biblical lenses. As a Christian, my mindset is, in all that I do, I'm to do it unto the glory of God. So if there is a political perspective that is out there, my first thing to ask is, what does the scripture say? What does God say? And then that's how I that's how I examine it. I don't look at it from the perspective of, how I personally feel about it, unless it's a minor issue. But we're talking about significant issues which the president deals with, things that impact us on a national scale. I look at all of these through a biblical lens, every one of them. So when it comes down to issues related to immigration, the economy, a wide open border, the dangers that are involved with that, when it comes to the life issue, when it comes to the issue of marriage, that's my perspective, point blank, period. So let me just lay that out there so you understand exactly where I'm coming from. So let's get to this next video, make it a little bigger. And as we go into, as I continue to lay out this case.
A top priority for lawmakers as they get back to work. Today on Capitol Hill, multiple hearings, all focused on the southern border.
From the humanitarian crisis to how administration policies affect the American workforce, lawmakers want accountability at the border.
With national security correspondent Caitlin Berg brings us more in tonight's top story. Caitlin?
John, Jenna, there's bipartisan agreement the border crisis negatively affects both Americans and migrants. The big disconnect comes in who's to blame.
President Biden took the North to enforce our nation's laws, and yet he's not doing that on the subject of immigration.
It was actually the Trump administration's border policies that imposed devastating human costs, particularly on families and children.
Okay, let's think about that for a minute. Now, did Trump separate families? Yes, he did. Now, the question to ask is, why did he separate families? Well, maybe it has something to do with the fact that the first thing that you did was as you entered into this country was illegal. You snuck through the border and you entered illegally. Let's look at the real world. Let's look at our country. When a parent commits a crime, what ends up happening? They typically get separated from their children. Not the children's fault, but based on the actions of the parent. So what should we do? The fact that a criminal is a parent, so what should we do? House them with their children? Oh, we don't, of course not. That's not what we do. We use logic. We make sure that we are a nation of laws and we enforce those laws. So if you come to our country illegally, yes, there are consequences, and you should take those into consideration. But at the same time, and I'll let the video progress because you'll hear the other side of this argument as well.
A House Homeland Security Committee hearing, Tim Ballard, a former DHS agent and inspiration of the film Sound of Freedom, testified that failure to secure the border benefits human traffickers.
I have personally seen how ports of entry were responsible for helping rescue a child, catch a sexual predator, and start a chain of events that rescued multiple children from his abuse.
Ballard also pointed to data from the Health and Human Services Department showing at least 85,000 unaccompanied minors have disappeared after entering the U.S. and being placed in the custody of unvetted sponsors.
It's more difficult to adopt a cat for sure in the United States than it is to go down and take one of these children out of the custody of HHS and claim that I'm a sponsor.
Meanwhile, Democrat witness Lee Gallant, an ACLU attorney, highlighted.
So he's basically saying almost anybody can go down and say that they're this kid's parent, their father, their mother, whatever. But yet Trump was the one that didn't care about kids. It's silly. All I'm asking is that for anyone listening who disagrees with me is just think logically. That's all I'm asking. What's the logical conclusion from these politics, these policies, I should say, from Trump, and then the logical conclusion of the policies from Joe Biden? When you have a wide open border, when your checks and balances have been basically brought down to nothing, what's the impact on us as a nation? Now, I'm gonna try to move forward and not be too long because I have a few more videos to address this topic. I still think the topic of immigration is extremely important. So I have a few more videos and a little bit more info to share with you on that.
The estimated 5,500 children separated from parents under the Trump administration policies.
5 years later, there remain hundreds of children who still have not been reunited with their parents because of the failure to document and keep track of the parents and children.
We're here investigating what's going on right now. Are y'all going to sue the Biden administration over the 85,000 missing children because of these policies?
Yeah, they're picking and choosing which kids they're more concerned with. Now, I'm not minimizing the fact that if there are 5,000 kids and they've been separated from their parents and they haven't been able to reunite, but 85,000 in comparison that have come across the border that have completely disappeared. We have no idea where they are. So get your facts straight and get your priorities straight.
Myra Cantu, wife of a Border Patrol agent, addressed the trauma experienced daily by her husband and his colleagues in their interactions with migrants.
Imagine this, a child who has just been through a horrible, traumatizing journey, may have possibly been raped or tortured by bad people, has now gained the trust of a Border Patrol agent. The child decides to vent to this agent and pours out every emotion he or she has been holding back. What was the plan for our agents who would be hearing these stories from the millions of illegal immigrants you and you were crossing?
Meanwhile, the White House now faces backlash from some Democratic mayors in cities like New York and Chicago, all struggling to deal with a major influx in migrants over the last year. Just this weekend, New York City Mayor Eric Adams warning that all city agencies could see budgets cut by 15% because of the increased cost of the crisis. John?
And I find that pretty ironic coming from Mayor Adams. It wasn't that long ago where he gleefully announced that New York was a sanctuary city, and he invited the immigrants to come along, to come to his state. Wasn't that long ago. But for some reason now, I can't say for some reason. I mean, I give him credit for realizing he was wrong. I don't know if he came out and openly admitted it. I give him credit for seeing the error of his ways. But the dude was basically clueless, because it wasn't that long ago where he made a video saying that this is going to destroy New York City, the illegal immigrant crisis. He made a video not that long ago saying it's going to destroy New York City. But then he got hammered by saying that. Now he's under investigation. But there's no correlation. That's just a coincidence. Let me share a little bit of info with y'all. Hopefully this will come up here. Let me see here. Hopefully it's up on the screen. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. All right, here we go. The Pew Research Center, how border apprehension, ICE arrests, and deportations have changed under Trump. Donald Trump, and I'll skim through this. I'm not going to read all of it. Donald Trump has long pushed for a tougher approach on illegal immigration, both on the U.S. border and elsewhere in the country. As a candidate for president, Trump pledged to build a border wall to reduce illegal crossings. And shortly after being elected, Trump said his administration would deport as many as 3 million unauthorized immigrants with criminal records living in the United States. So how has his immigration enforcement changed, or how has immigration enforcement changed under Trump? Here's a look at the data on 3 key measures: border apprehensions, interior arrests, and deportations, based on the latest available full-year statistics from Customs and Border Patrol. All right, apprehensions at the U.S. border. The number of again, I'm not going to read all of this. The number of migrant apprehensions at the U.S. border rose in fiscal year 2019 to its highest annual level in 12 years. Under Trump, the highest level in 12 years of border illegal migrant apprehension. The 851,508 apprehensions record last fiscal year, October 2018, September 2019, were more than double the number the year before, 396,579, but still well short of the levels in the early 2000s, according to the CBP. The agency tasked with enforcing immigration laws at the border. So in the last 12 years, in 2018, 2019, Trump had the highest numbers as far as border arrests. Let's scroll down here. Arrests of unauthorized immigrants in the country's interior. While the CBP enforces immigration laws at the border, ICE is tasked with apprehending unauthorized immigrants in the interior of the country. The number of interior arrests made by ICE, known as administrative arrest, rose 30% in fiscal year 2017. After Trump signed an executive order giving the agency broader authority to detain unauthorized immigrants. All right, let's scroll down here. Deportations, removal of unauthorized immigrants rose 17% from 2017 to 2018, below recent highs. So it did rise. So we see just from this little short article, we see a significant rise in the number of people that were arrested and apprehended at the border or in our country who are here illegally. So, all right, let me remove this and pull up the next one here. Now, one thing that was really popular for people to say, and I'm talking while I'm searching, was that the border policies were racist, basically. And you remember how Trump was panned during the debate, talking about black jobs and the impact of quote unquote black jobs when it comes to illegal immigration. Let's check this out with me, will you? And this is from 2015. Okay, and an article by the LA Times. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We'll just check out a few lines of it as we proceed. Op-ed, liberals say immigration enforcement is racist. So they've been saying this for a minute. But the group most likely to benefit from immigration enforcement is black men. All right. Hopefully this won't keep popping up. So let me read that one more time. Liberals say immigration enforcement is racist, but the group most likely to benefit from immigration enforcement is black men. President Trump's election victory over Hillary Clinton. Again, this is they updated 2018 article. President Trump's election victory over Hillary Clinton seemed to herald a new era for border security and immigration enforcement. But his polarizing and occasionally ignorant comments, and I honestly can't even argue with that, are about immigrants have handed his adversaries a convenient pretext for stymieing compromise on immigration reform, racism. Left-leaning advocacy groups and a host of Democrats all too often shy away from the specifics of the debate and instead lean on the cries of bigotry, resorting to claims like that of House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who has described Trump's approach to immigration reform as an effort to make, quote unquote, America white again. Wow. Claims that immigration enforcement equals racism ignore the reality that the group most likely to benefit from a tougher approach to immigration enforcement is young black men who often compete with recent immigrants for low-skilled jobs. I'll read this next section. And again, I'll make this available. Don't let me forget, y'all. I'll make this available in the comment section, this article. But I'm not going to read the whole thing. This dynamic played out recently at a large bakery in Chicago that supplies buns to McDonald's. Some 800 immigrant laborers, most of them from Mexico, lost their jobs last year after an audit by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Culver Hill Bakery, owned by Aritza, a big Swiss food conglomerate, had to hire new workers, 80 to 90% of whom are African American. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, the new workers are paid $14 per hour or $4 per hour more than the illegal immigrant workers. In this case, and in many others, the beneficiaries of immigration enforcement were working class blacks who are often passed over for jobs by unscrupulous employers. I'm just going to leave that right there, y'all. Y'all can do with that information what you will. But when it's all said and done, there's no denying the reality of who is negatively impacted by this so-called racist concept of border enforcement, which is totally stupid. The fact that a nation can't defend its own borders. Totally ridiculous. But, all right. I think I hit on the issue of, okay, I got to show one more. I got to pull up one more article regarding the border. Have to. So people can really know what's going on. Again, I'm making my case as to why I support Donald Trump. And I'm clearly not going to make it through all of this because this border issue has taken up quite a bit of time. But let's just check this one out. So I can make this a little bigger so y'all can see. Illegal immigrant. This article came out. What's the date of this? 2018. Illegal immigrants. This is just in one county, I believe. But illegal immigrants commit 142% more crime than legal immigrants and citizens. That's a report. This is from the Epoch Times. And let me just add to that real quick. There's some locations in New York right now where it's like 75% of the crime taking place in New York. I forget what city it was in particular, but 75% of the individuals arrested were illegal immigrants. Let all this sink in, but let me touch on this article again. New data from the Arizona State Prison System shows that illegal immigrants are at least 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime than other Arizonans. According to a study by John Lott, founder and president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And let me highly recommend to you John Lott. His Crime Prevention Research Center is a wealth of knowledge, and it pushes back against a lot of the nonsense that we're fed through the mainstream media. Let's proceed. Next paragraph. Lott also found that illegal immigrants tend to commit more serious crimes, serving 10.5% longer sentences, and are more likely to be classified as dangerous, and are 45% more likely to be gang members than U.S. citizens. They are also much more likely to commit sexual offenses against minors, sexual assault, DUI, and armed robberies. Oh, let me proceed here. I got to read this next section. I'll wrap this portion up. If illegal immigrants commit crime nationally, as they do in Arizona, in 2016, they would have been responsible for over 1,000 more murders, 5,200 more, I won't say the word, some of these things I think YouTube would flag, 8,900 more robberies, 25,300 aggravated assaults, and 26,900 burglaries, Lott said in the summary. So again, I'm pointing to the reality of this so-called racist idea of border enforcement. Let me get rid of this. All right, let's move on to the next topic. I believe it. Let me see here. I got it all cut and pasted. Okay. So again, if you care about your citizens, as a Christian man, if I'm to care about my brother, my neighbor, I'm going to be concerned if us opening up the borders allows God knows who, and massively, yes, and I said that, massively increases the number of the criminal element. I mean, honestly, do we even know who's here in our country? Do we even know? Are we, do we know who has a background and has a background with terrorist activity, who's just waiting for an opportunity to pounce and lash out on us? We honestly don't. I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that Biden, his entire administration, Kamala Harris, most definitely, they should face criminal charges for their carelessness in relation to the border. I know a lot of people, or I know some people may not agree, but there are a lot of us out there who think that what they did, they definitely should suffer the consequences. Okay, but let's get to our next topic of religious freedom. Okay, religious freedom. That's my second example as to, or second reason, I should say. Or I did talk about the economy slightly, but according to this list right here, this is reason number 2 as to why I am a supporter of Donald J. Trump, and particularly as a Christian man. So let's move on to this. Let me share this article with you. You know what? Let me show a video. Hold on one second. A Christian perspective on the Equality Act. Let's share this. So I can make this bigger. There we go.
Under the Equality Act, disagreement is discriminating in sports and doctors performing procedures like gender reassignments that go against their conscience.
I'm gonna back that up a little bit. I really want y'all to hear that. So if you tell me that you don't support men and women's sports, you don't support children being transitioned, if you don't support those ideas, but you turn around and you vote for somebody who is very vocal of their support of these ideas, then you are complicit by proxy. There's no getting around it. You're saying that I'm going to go and vote and put my, my name behind this particular candidate, knowing that they support the mutilation of children, knowing that they support as getting their genitalia chopped off, knowing that they're getting puberty blockers, knowing that they'll have things that are done to them from a very young age that'll impact them for the rest of their lives. There's no way you're not complicit in that. No way. And I really want some of y'all to think about these things. Let's continue.
Equality Act, disagreement is discrimination. It includes gay marriage, men competing in women's sports, and doctors performing procedures like gender reassignments that go against their conscience. It's a bill the president wants to sign into law during his first 100 days. The Equality Act provides long overdue federal civil rights protections for LGBTQ plus Americans, preventing discrimination in our housing, education, public services, and lending systems, the president tweeted. But the bill does much more.
We can see that it would immediately be stripping religious Americans and stripping girls and women of our equal rights.
By redefining sex discrimination, the measure would provide for abortion on demand, likely end a long-standing prohibition on taxpayer-funded abortions, and remove conscience protections for doctors and nurses.
So let's kind of hash that out a little bit. So if you're a doctor and you don't believe that you don't believe in a child quote unquote transitioning, and you say I'm not going to do it, you could face legal charges. You could be fined, probably lose your license. That's one of the many dangers with this Equality Act that Biden promoted and Kamala Harris supported as well, and that Trump pushed back against. He pushed back against. Now I know that he's pro LGBT, he's pro gay marriage, but none of his policies moved that forward. None of those policies impacted me as a believer or you as a citizen, or for a doctor to be able to say he didn't want to have that, he didn't want to actually perform that operation or that procedure, or whether it be the transitioning procedure or whether that be an abortion. I think it's pretty simple. You may say that you don't like Donald Trump's personality, and I understand that. The dude's brash, extremely rough around the edges. He could be insulting. He could be rude. There's no question about it. But when it comes down to policy versus policy, I don't give a damn personally whether you look like me or whether you're a female and it's a good thing. Or it would be a cool thing to have a female, the first female president. Personally, I could care less. None of that matters. What matters most is the impact that those policies will have on us as a nation, as a society. That's the most important thing. Let's continue.
Biological men would be allowed to compete in women's sports, effectively obliterating Title IX, while girls and women would be forced to share locker rooms and bathrooms in schools and public places. Harley says we don't have to guess about the results. Just look at cities and states that have already passed similar laws.
In Alaska, the city of Anchorage had a law like this, and punished a faith-based homeless shelter for battered women and actually forced them to allow biological men who identified as women to sleep and change clothes alongside these women, most of whom were victims of rape and sex trafficking.
She says the Equality Act allows for subjectivity, an issue Senator James Lankford raised last summer on the Senate floor.
If I go to interview in a job and I'm not hired, I can sue that employer because I perceive they were thinking I was gay and so they didn't hire me. I don't have to prove anything. It's based simply on my perception or belief.
Under the bill, Christian beliefs are unlawful. Churches could be prevented from requiring employees to abide by their biblical beliefs about marriage and differences between men and women. Alliance Defending Freedom is litigating a case in Virginia, a state that recently passed a law like the Equality Act.
Churches are banned from having a dress code, having a code of conduct for their employees, even asking in interviews if potential employees share core religious beliefs.
I mean, just think about it. You are a pastor and you're looking to hire a new youth leader. And the guy comes in and he's dressed up like a woman and he's clearly a dude trying to pass as a female. And you have a biblical standard to say, okay, the people we hire to work in this capacity needs to be adhere to the best of our knowledge to a biblical worldview. I mean, that's how it should be. Lord knows I can go on and on about the reality of that not taking place in a lot of these modern churches, but that's a completely different issue. But you could be punished for holding to biblical principles. You could be punished for not allowing a boy to compete against girls. And we all know, anybody with common sense knows that boys are just physically built different. Higher muscle mass, greater bone density, much greater levels of testosterone, so on and so forth. Men have an inherent physical advantage in most normal situations. But yet, again, these are some of the policies that Kamala Harris is promoting and Joe Biden. And if you say, oh, wait a minute, Eric, this is going on. This was from a few years ago where it was what Joe Biden wanted. Most certainly Kamala Harris wouldn't have. She doesn't support this, does she? Because she's trying to be fair and balanced. Well, at least that's what she's trying to present to everybody. But for anyone who's followed her even remotely over the years, or have heard anything or have listened to anything that she stood for over the years, let me share a little something with y'all. The picture changes quite a bit. Did I pull that up? It's a PDF. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna shrink my big old head down so y'all can see this as I scroll through. Okay, where is it? All right, here we go. Kamala Harris, again, I'll share this link. Remind me, y'all, because I got a lot of links to share. But I'll share this link, or if you want me to, I could send it to you specifically. Just shoot me, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. It'd be easier if you follow me on Facebook. But I'll just read through some of this. I won't even go into much detail. The Equality Act, is a bill, if passed, will amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity will be added. In employment, housing, public accommodations, federally funded programs, credit and jury services. So if you say federally funded colleges, I would assume nonprofits, churches would be involved in that as well. In essence, this bill, if passed, will open the door to the government's acceptance of all of LGBTQ lifestyles and will impact all aspects of society, government, businesses, education, media, entertainment. Entertainment's all in, so that doesn't matter. Family and religion. Sexual orientation and gender identity will become protected classes. Okay, let's scroll down here. I'll start with where it says free speech. The Equality Act will threaten free speech because people will be afraid to say what they believe and could be punished if they disagree or speak against gays ever again. So here's an example. If I were to be out street preaching, and I'm sure all this will be hashed out, and the opponents of it will argue that it's not the case. But if a Christian is out doing evangelism and he shares how homosexuality is a sin, that could come back on them, and that could completely hammer free speech. That person could be facing potential charges. That's the reality of it. And it's also like the example that I mentioned just previously when it comes down to church services. If somebody isn't hired based on their lifestyle, they could be hammered on that. Let me post this. Hey, I'm doing good, man. Good to see you, Steve. Yeah, I know it's been too long, man. And I don't know, I get in these weird making YouTube content is pretty dang hard, let me tell you. But I have a big vision of the reach I'd like to have. I really want to reach a large number of people. And I can't do that with this hit or miss thing that I've been doing over the years. I have to stay consistent. And there's always a topic worth talking about, always. Whether it's what's going on now with the elections coming up or whatever, there's always something worth talking about. And I'm a big dude with a lot of opinions. So it's good to see you too, brother. But yeah, so the reality when it comes to this Equality Act that Biden and Harris support, the impact that it can have when it comes to women, men and women's sports, the impact it can have in our military, the impact it can have on our freedom of religion, be very damaging. Now, that doesn't mean that me as a believer that I need to be stifled as a result, that I should stop talking. The history of the church is that of persecution. Persecution and the church go hand in hand. Suffering goes hand in hand with the Christian church. That's the reality of it. But if you have an ideology that is willfully pushing up against the church, the Christian faith, or anybody of faith for that matter, whether they're Muslim or Mormon or Jehovah's Witness or whatever they are, but you have a worldview that says that certain sexual practices, the LGBTQ lifestyle is sinful. If this thing goes into effect, and I guarantee you that if Harris gets back into office, she will attempt to push this or something similar to it forward. And again, this video has, or this article has a ton of links, Google links, so on and so forth, that break it all down. It said the impact of women, parents. Let me read the parent section. The Equality Act will erode parental rights. For example, a couple in Ohio declined. Let me make sure that this article is up here because I know I'm talking. I'm going to make it a little bigger. Sorry about that, y'all. Let me break this down. Where was I? Okay. The Equality Act will erode parental rights. I'm under three parents. For example, a couple in Ohio declined hormone treatment for their child. The Children's Hospital of Cincinnati involved Child Protective Services, and the parents were ultimately stripped of their parental rights. Look it up, y'all. That's the reality. That's what we're dealing with today. And people look at me crazy because I say I'm supporting Donald Trump and I'm not supporting the other side. You tell me who's crazy and who isn't. I think that especially if you call yourself a Christian, one, I think, I think you should go back and examine. We're called to examine ourselves to see if we're in the faith. That's biblical. And I think that you are fooling yourself, or you are been wildly deceived if you think that supporting this nonsense is consistent with what Scripture says. Yeah, it's a black woman, like I said just a few minutes ago. Yes, and then when it comes to her ethnicity, there's even a debate on that. A lot of people are questioning whether she's actually an African-American woman. A lot of people say that she's Indian and white, but that's not what this video is for. I'll let y'all do your research on that. Check out some of Candace Owens' more recent content. But and she's not the only one. Judge Joe Brown, other people are out there talking about it. But again, that's beyond the scope of this video right here. Again, that's two. First, we talked about the border. Then we talked about religious freedom. The Biden-Harris administration, Kamala Harris and her views are rabidly anti-God and in particularly anti-Christian. There's no getting around it. No getting around it whatsoever. And if you're a believer, a Christian, someone who professes Christ as Lord and who professes to have given their lives over to Christ, that they are truly seeking to be Christ-like, help me understand how you can support all of these evil policies. I mean, honestly, that's an honest question. And if you actually want to come on here and we can have a live conversation, I would absolutely love that. I could send you the link. I would absolutely love to do that, whether it's today or another day. That would be an awesome thing, because I just want to understand where you're coming from. I want to understand how you're able to reconcile that in your own mind. I truly do. All right, but let's move on here. What's the next topic? I won't even go too much because I think those videos basically cover when it comes down to religious freedom. And okay, let's go to number 4. No, I'm skipping over protecting freedom of speech. I'm gonna skip over that one just for the sake of time because I'm approaching an hour here and I wanted to keep it close to an hour. Let's go to tough on crime. Go to crime issue here. But let me know what y'all are thinking about this, some of the stuff, this whole discussion. What do you think? You think I'm off base? Do you think I'm on point? I would love to know your thoughts in particular. Okay. I don't think there's a debate when it comes down to the issue of crime over the last few years. Hold on, I got one comment. Hey, Michelle, it has been a long time, I know. Good to see you. I voted on Sunday. I'm working as an election inspector. Awesome. Good for you. On Tuesday at my local polling place. Rock solid. Rock solid. I'm definitely proud of you for doing that. Yeah, you know, there's been a lot going on. I'm going to make a video in particular to go into more detail of some of the things I had to I had some major challenges over the last few months. So, but it's good to see you here, one, and it's good to see that you're actually being out there and you're getting involved in what's going on, because if we don't do that, we're basically throwing our country away. And I know there are a lot of Christians out there who don't want to vote. And before you leave, if you're here, stay to the end. I'm going to be wrapping this one up shortly, but I have a video I want to share with y'all that I think is very, very profound. And if you're a believer, a professing believer, and you haven't voted, I think this 5-minute video that I plan on sharing with you at the end is something you seriously might want to consider. Corey, what you got going on? Oh, Corey had a panel discussion on this last night. Yeah, I did. I saw a little bit of that. It was very good. We got to get out there. We have to get involved. There's too much at stake. I honestly believe this. Apart from the grace of God, because if you look at it, our country, I've been reading through the book of Numbers through the Old Testament, and I'm working my way through the book of Numbers. I'm about halfway through, and I see all of the rebellion from Israel, and you know, you want to look at them and be like, man, you guys actually saw the Lord working miracles right there in front of you, time and time again, but people still have a tendency to want to rebel. But what can we learn from that? One, seeing the miraculous isn't a guarantee that people will continue or will seek the Lord. Oftentimes you'll hear the non-believers out there saying, I need to see a miracle. And that's the only way I'll believe. But if we look at the scriptures, we see that there countless times people saw God acting in miraculous ways and still chose to follow after idols, still chose to reject him. So that's nonsense. And then number two, we also should be able to look at the nation of Israel and their rebellion as a mirror for us as individuals, and then also as a country. And I think that our country, even though it has a very true Christian basis, and as far as our foundations, we have drifted, and it's been a rocky road all the way through. But we have drifted, especially these days, we have drifted far from that. And in my honest opinion, it is only by the grace of God that we can recover from this mess that we're currently in. So I've been praying hard. Me and my family, we've been praying very hard in hopes that the Lord would be gracious to us as such an undeserving nation. And as flawed a man as Donald Trump is, he is not my pastor. I'm not voting for a pastor, but I'm voting for an individual, a man who I believe will push us closer to righteousness compared to the other side. There's just no debate, none whatsoever. Mark Aho, are you a Christian? I'm just wondering. You got a lot of comments up there, but hey, would you like to come on? We can have a discussion, but let me know what your belief system is. Are you a believer? And if he's a Nazi, let me ask you this. If those of us who support Trump are Nazis, why were there so many Jews and blacks and Puerto Ricans at the rally in New York in Madison Square Garden the other day? And tell me, how could you rationally compare Donald Trump to a Nazi? You're comparing a man whose policies actually have tried to save more lives, keep us out of war, who if anybody has genocidal tendencies, it's the political left. That's just real. Wide open, policies when it comes down to who's behind the murder of innocent children in the womb, all the way up until childbirth. Like, who are the ones that are responsible for that? Who's fighting that? Because what you'll consistently hear time and time again, the left will say that I think abortion is a decision between a woman and their doctor. And then when you turn around and ask them, what limits would you place on that? Is there a specific time? They will almost universally never give you an answer. Never. Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, anytime they ask that question, they dodge it every single time. They're the ones who are genocidal, period. They're being soft on crime, the heightened crime rate, more folks, in particularly more people in the inner city, black, Hispanic folks, white folks. Those are the ones who are suffering as a result of their soft on crime. Wide open borders, people losing their job, the economy crumbling. I think it's a very lame argument if anybody thinks that. I would love for you, Mark, to come on and we can have a conversation if you're being real. If you're just being sarcastic and trolling, it's all good. I don't mind. But if you really want to have a legitimate conversation, I would love to have you on and have a discussion, especially if you profess to be a Christian, especially that. But let's move on, shall we? Let me read this article here, y'all. Where am I at? Okay. So we're talking about the issue of crime. There was a discussion during the debate, the last debate with Harris and Trump about crime. And when Donald Trump pushed back and said that the crime had increased, David Muir, whatever his name is, he was the one who was trying to state that, oh no, crime is down. But it was maybe a few days later, the FBI adjusted, quote unquote, adjusted their most recent report. And what did that adjustment entail? I'm glad you asked. Why am I having trouble finding this thing up here? Okay, here we go. Because subdued blue. Okay, Real Clear Investigations. This is from the crimeresearch.org. The FBI did a stealth edit, quietly revises violent crime stats. So what happened as a result of their revisions? Okay, when the FBI originally released the final crime data from 2022 in September 23, it reported that the nation's violent crime rate fell by 2.1%. This quickly became and remains a Democratic Party talking point to counter Donald Trump's claim of soaring crime. But the FBI has quietly revised those numbers, releasing new data that shows violent crime increased in 2020 by 4.5%. Now, that doesn't sound like a large number until you start to dig down into it. Let's check it out. The new data includes thousands more murders, sexual assaults, robberies, and aggravated assaults. The Bureau, which has been at the center of partisan storms, made no mention of these revisions in their September 2024 press release. Interesting. Let's scroll down here a little bit, because everybody's talking about the media was running up and down, especially in light of the upcoming election, saying that crime is down. Crime isn't up, but people think crime is up, but that's really inaccurate. The actual changes in crimes are extensive. The updated data for 2022 report that there were 80,029 more violent crimes than in 2021. 80,000, y'all, almost rapidly approaching 100,000. There were an additional 1,699 murders, nearly 1,700. 7,780, I'll just say essays, assaults. 33,459 robberies, which force or violence needs to take place in order for a crime to be considered a robbery. If I steal something, if I just go into a store and I steal a soda, that's just a burglary charge, a theft charge, misdemeanor charge. You probably won't even go to jail. But if on the way out, I push the clerk over or knock somebody down or threaten violence on them, that's a robbery charge, which is a felony offense. So 33,459 robberies and 37,000 aggravated assaults. 37,000. That's what the actual numbers were that the FBI somehow failed to report. Say what you want, y'all. But for me, it seems like some of these revisions that happen to come out later, they always typically seem to be handy for the Democratic Party with their talking points when the debate's coming up. It's similar to the Hunter Biden laptop. Let's rewind to 2020, shall we? What was the media narrative about the Hunter Biden laptop? 51 former Intel head said it was Russian disinformation. What did Joe Biden say during the debate? The 51 Intel heads came out and said that it was Russian disinformation. That's what he said when Donald Trump brought it up during the debate. What do we come to? And then the New York Post was taken off of Twitter. Anytime that article was referenced on Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg literally came out not that long ago and admitted that they suppressed that information because they were told that it was Russian disinformation. But it wasn't until last year, I think it was last year, when it officially became known that, that's actually Hunter Biden's laptop. And the FBI knew it was Hunter Biden's all along, but they just failed to say anything. I'm telling you, y'all, if you honestly think that this mainstream media is telling you the truth, you're truly missing the point. That's why I listen to them on occasion just to see what the other side is saying, but I do not trust the mainstream media. I'm talking about ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC. I almost never listen to Fox. I get my information from independent news sources. There are a bunch of people out there, a bunch of websites that they may have a more conservative leaning, but you're more likely to get a balanced approach, and you're more likely to get the truth. Let's see. We don't want Harris to be the first female president. I don't want Trump era to end with him being put on trial for trying to illegally overturn an election. We would all look shameful. And I don't want the Trump era to end with him being put on trial for trying to illegally overturn. I don't know. Are you saying that he did illegally try to overturn the election? Because I don't believe that. I don't believe that to be the case personally. I believe that January 6th was an intentional uprising. You think about it. Information, Byron Donalds, I think he said he's on the Senate Intel Committee. He said there was information that came out where they said that Donald Trump asked for National Guardsmen. I believe he also asked for additional Capitol Hill Capitol Police. And Nancy Pelosi basically rejected it. And I think the local mayor as well rejected some of that also. My personal opinion, there were a ton of concerns when it came down to the 2020 election. When it comes to big tech censoring information, censoring those more conservative voices, the Hunter Biden laptop in particular. There's research done. I think the guy's name, I can't remember his name. I think is it Epstein? There's a researcher who researches the impact that Google, the information Google puts out there. And I'll get his website and I'll send it to y'all, or I'll find one of his interviews where he basically said that Google has the power to shift the votes by somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% based on the amount of information that they allow and the amount of information that they suppress. And it's been proven that they've done so in recent elections. And we're not even talking about the voting machines and some of the other irregularities that were taking place. Heck, we're even seeing some nowadays already for the early voting. The burning of the ballots, ballots being found in the dumpster, being dumped by postal workers. We're seeing all people not being allowed to vote in Pennsylvania early. We're seeing all kinds of nonsense. But some of the laws being attempted to be shifted. The fact that you have Democrats around the country basically saying that illegals, you have judges saying that if you're an illegal immigrant, you should be allowed to stay on the voter roll. Man, I'm telling you, I went out and voted. I took care of I did early voting, but it's insane what we're dealing with now. And the left was vehemently stating that, oh, we're not trying to overturn an election. We're not trying to allow illegals to vote. But anytime there's some legislation that comes up where the right is trying to say, hey, the Republicans are saying, hey, let's make sure that these illegals can't vote. The left always pushes against it. What does that tell you? I mean, honestly, what does that tell you? They don't want there to be any voter ID. That's insane. It's insane. All it looks like to me, and I think that if we're all being honest and fair, all that looks like to me is just that they want power. They want to keep power by any means necessary. And they've been largely successful, especially over the last couple of voting cycles. But you know what, y'all? I didn't get close to what I wanted to share. I think what did I make it to? I made it to being tough on crime. I mean, right now, all of these judges around the country, these very progressive judges around the country, they are the ones who are with the bail reform that took place in New York. Prime example, New York, a very, very good example with the bail reform. These people basically they've adjusted what's a felony offense now. So you have people in and out, people who should be in jail. They're getting out. It's happening in Houston. So one of the Houston news networks, you can find them on YouTube. They have a special news report section where they address soft on crime, these soft on crime judges and the consequences of their being soft on crime. And And what do you guess? Lo and behold, they're a bunch of progressives, a bunch of liberals. That's just a bunch of leftists. That's just how it is. That's not me trying to hate on anybody. That's just the reality of what the repercussions of what these people stand for. I watched election night since I was a kid. Never before did they say they would stop counting for the night and resume the next day. Exactly. There were just too many. And then there was a point. Here's what gets me. In 2016, in 2020, you could get demonetized if you're a YouTuber. You can get taken off of social media for saying that the election was stolen. But in year two, and then you were called all kinds of crazy names, a conspiracy theorist. But the Democrats have challenged the election in 2000, 2004, 2016. There was violent crime that took place. I plan on making a video, hopefully in the next couple of days, when people talk about Trump being an existential threat to democracy. I'm going to push back against that claim very firmly, and I think I can make a very strong and clear case that the true existential threat to our democracy is the political left, and I don't even think it could be argued, not even close. But I won't get into that too much. But yeah, let's progress. I want to wrap it up. Here we go. Another good one. Catch and release, Michelle. Excellent. Excellent. I mean, excellent point. You bring somebody in. I mean, that's with the border. I mean, that's even happening on some of our streets. The soft on crime is like, look at some of these more progressive states like Washington and Portland. They defunded the police. A lot of areas, a lot of these cities literally defunded the police. But then they saw what happened. A logical person would say, hey, that's not a good idea to take money away from law enforcement and put it towards education. What's the immediate impact on that? People aren't going to get their hearts and minds changed if you give the schools some more money. I mean, that's a big question in the first place. The schools getting more money. I mean, I question the wisdom of that in particular when they're just pumping out more and more woke idiots is what they're doing, brainwash young people. But they defunded the police and crime skyrocketed. I think it was Portland. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was Portland that made drugs legal. What did you see? A rapid spike in paraphernalia on the streets. The crime rate spiked dramatically. I mean, feces on the sides of the road, and people in the public public outcry was too great. And these people were like, "Oh no, this ain't gonna work." And what did they do? They got rid of it like the next year. And then they were looking to every city that tried to defund the police were scrambling to get law enforcement back within 2 years. I'm telling you. And what does Donald Trump say? Be tough on crime, firm on crime. That's what he's espousing. To me, the argument, there isn't even an argument to be made as far as who should be supported. It's like there's not even a reasonable discussion. Kamala Harris is not fit for office, period. Donald Trump is rude, brash, harsh, but his policies on every level are far better. What will the impact be on your everyday life? That's the question to ask. Not whether Orange Man bad, and I think he'd be talking crazy to people and all this kind of nonsense. How will his politics, his policies impact your everyday life, impact your kids' life? I'll share one last thing with y'all before I bounce up out of here. And this is on the, this is for any believer out there in particular who's not sure what they want to do when it comes to voting. This is for you.
for why Christians shouldn't vote or shouldn't care about politics. One, Christians aren't supposed to be political. Jesus is coming back. Kingdom is not of this world. Our citizenship is in heaven. Jesus is not here yet. Not here yet. Maybe he'll be here before the election. That would be great. But he has placed you, Christian, here in this temporal, physical place, not arbitrarily or accidentally, but providentially and purposely. God does nothing accidentally. He does nothing arbitrarily. Nothing takes him by surprise. Psalm 139 says that every single one of your days was written out for you before any of them came to be. So you have been placed here by a sovereign God for a purpose. And we know that purpose, it's to love God and love our neighbor. And guess what? Politics is a way to love your neighbor. It is not the way to love your neighbor. It is not the primary, certainly not the exclusive way to love your neighbor, but it is a way to love your neighbor. Abortion affects your neighbor. Illegal immigration affects your neighbor. Soft on crime policies affect your neighbor. Gender ideology affects your neighbor. The redefinition of marriage affects your neighbor. In fact, it affects your most vulnerable neighbor. And all of these cases, it affects children most, because children are always the unconsenting subjects of progressive social experiments. Number two, this is what I hear a lot. And maybe some of you are thinking this right now. Well, they're both bad. They're both bad, so you don't want to vote for them. Maybe that's what you're thinking. And I understand that. Look, I am as conservative and as pro-life as they come, and Trump is not with me on all of those things. I want him to be more pro-life. I want him to be on the side of the definition of natural marriage. I want him to be where we are. However, the two sides are not the same. One side unapologetically believes in the unfettered, unmitigated, taxpayer-funded of abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy and even babies dying by neglect after their abortions, and one side doesn't. Guess what? Every election for all of time has been a decision between the lesser of two evils. Every time. Every election has been a decision between two sinners. There's only one perfect person that has ever lived. His name is Jesus, and he is already king, so he doesn't need our votes. You're not voting for your pastor or your mentor or your friend. You are not voting based on vibes. You are not voting based on skin color or gender or any of these things that are superficial. Personality lasts 4 to 8 years. Policy lasts not only your lifetime, but the lifetimes of your children and grandchildren. Don't vote on things that will be here today and gone tomorrow. Vote on policy, the things that will last. The third reason I hear, well, I'm not going to vote because I'm disinterested in politics. Well, politics are interested in you. And there may have been a day at one point where you could disengage from politics and you didn't have to care because it wasn't really affecting your life. It's affecting your life now. Now you have to worry about your kindergartner learning that they were born in the wrong body. Now you have to learn, or now you have to worry about politics infecting and intersecting into your church life, into your nonprofit life, into your private Christian life. Now parents of gender-deceived kids have to worry that their children are going to be taken out of their custody. Politics is interested in us. So if you care not only about your own life, but the lives of the most vulnerable, vote. Not for the perfect person, but for the best option that is on the table. Here are 3 things
Well, I hope y'all take that to heart. You think deeply on these issues, y'all. Again, this is not, if I can just repeat some of the things that Ali stated, this is not about voting for your pastor. This is pushing back evil, pushing back the darkness, and thinking and truly loving your neighbor. Again, that this isn't the primary way we are to love our neighbor. We shouldn't depend on a politician to dictate how we love. But if I can place a vote that can keep someone, some criminal, that can keep the borders from being wide open, which has been responsible for an untold number of crimes taking place, from the sexualization of our children, from the murders, from the sexual assaults, the massive amounts of fentanyl that has been brought into our country, destroying lives, then I'm going to do that. And I really hope that y'all go out there, if you haven't already done so, if you'll consider what we talked about today. Again, Donald Trump is not a perfect man, but I do like his policies. And they are not hindering my ability to go out there and share the gospel. He's not trying to stifle my ability to protect and defend my family. He's not trying to stifle my ability to speak freely. He's not trying to have women have their sports invaded by men. He's not trying to have women have to dress next to a man. I think it's very clear, y'all. Please consider what we talked about. I love y'all. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. Again, Lord willing, my plan is to be consistent, to make more content regularly. I really enjoy doing this. So, like I said, it can be really hard, especially when it comes to the editing. This live stuff is a lot easier, but the preparation could be a bit of a challenge. But I truly love this. Again, I'm thankful for y'all taking your time out and joining me. And you will see me very soon, God willing, most likely in a couple of days. I love y'all, and I will talk to you later. As always, God bless. Take care.